former ANC Secretary-General Ace Magashule yesterday urged voters in Pietermaritzburg to switch allegiance from the ANC. Magashule, who now leads African Congress for Transformation, was expelled from the governing party in June last year. The long-serving premier of the Free State is a close ally of former ANC President Jacob Zuma, and taking from what he told the media yesterday in KwaZulu-Natal, chances are high that his party will partner with Umkhonto weSizwe during the elections campaign. But what could this political alliance achieve in the general elections? Well, to help us unpack that, we are now joined by political analyst Musa Mdunge. Musa Mdunge, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Now, 4 months ago, Ace Magashule formed the ACT Party. About a month ago, the former President Jacob Zuma announced his allegiance to the MK Party. Should there be a solid allegiance and alliance between these two parties, what should we expect?
Good evening, Katlego, and to your viewers. This particular move by both Ace Magashule and Jacob Zuma was quite expected. And really, it is built off the factional battles within the ANC. Often, when we look at it, between the reformists in the form of Cyril Ramaphosa and on the other side, the Radical Economic Transformation Group as led by Jacob Zuma. And in many ways, the 2017 ANC elective conference was seminal in setting up this battle. You would recall that even among the top six, there was a split in terms of those positions between these groups. And in many ways, they had to be bedfellows in a very uncomfortable way. And so the failure of the 2017 compromise has led us to this point where the ANC on the one hand, as led by Cyril Ramaphosa, there seems to be a consolidation towards him. But on the other end, the RET group, who feel that they have not been represented by Ramaphosa's ANC, by the ANC's policy positions in government, have decided to form these splinter parties. Now, the interesting thing is, what impact will these parties have? Now, while Ace Magashule's ACT party is really weak in terms of what it can represent and provide in terms of electoral support, the MK party is really the one that is interesting, particularly from a regional perspective. When we think about how KZN, to borrow from the Americans, will be a swing province this particular election in 2024. And in fact, it has been a swing province if you think about the fact that it moved from IFP to ANC and potentially back to IFP. But what will it mean for the MK party to really make a dent in KZN? And the impact on KZN is not just about who enters power there, but it can have ramifications on a national picture. When you think about the fact that the line between the ANC getting about 50% and below will really be down to a few thousand votes. And this will make it very interesting considering voter turnout in the provinces and regions where it really matters. And that's why this coming together of these two parties becomes so important in how it will draw out and take away potential voters from the ANC.
Speaking of those swing provinces, if we're looking at the KZN possibly now denting the numbers for the ANC, we know that the Free State surely is some kind of ground for Ace Magashule. Could that also act in any way as a swing province, given the history of that province with Ace Magashule?
You are raising a very good point here, Katlego, because the one thing we've perhaps not considered very much so is looking at the other sort of rural provinces that have been the ANC's stronghold. And so, Ace Magashule can be a very important factor in that particular sense if he continues to hold the levers to which to move voters towards his particular base of support. Now, unfortunately for him, as the former premier of that province, his reputation in the Free State is not one that invokes excitement or any good thoughts when we particularly think of the various corruption scandals in that particular province. And so it will be interesting to see how both sides can feed off each other. But what I do particularly see happening, Katlego, here is a coming together even further of these radical economic transformation parties or the leftist parties to the ANC coming together. So potentially we could see an arrangement with the EFF. Potentially we can see other parties who are splinter groups of the ANC also come together. And that may provide to us a counter moonshot pact towards what the DA is trying to provide and the ANC's bid and ambition to actually get a majority in this year's election. So it's going to be very within the body politic of South Africa may well lead the country towards a three-horse race in terms of these elections, which will be very interesting for that for the very first time, South Africans may well have to think not just on the policy positions of the party they want to vote for, but have to look at the whole picture of a coalition and what that coalition represents, and can they stand behind that particular coalition. And this is where it is going to be very interesting, particularly if these three horses do not in any way get a majority of the vote. We will then begin to see deals being done in camera in order to get South Africa towards having some form of a majority government. Or we may see the ANC try to push a minority government. But what are the implications of that kind of political uncertainty for a country such as the one we have, given the challenges that we have economically?
Of course. I mean, speaking of that, Musa, during his January 8th statement earlier today, the president of the ANC says the ANC aims for an outright win, an outright victory in the 2024 elections. Do you think this is attainable? I mean, we're having a lot of conversations about the possibilities of a national coalition with many of these breakaway parties. Do you think it's possible? And who would the ANC, given that position, who would they go into coalition with? I mean, because when asked, Ace Magashule said the ANC would most likely not go into coalition with the ACT party, and they don't want to go into coalitions with any progressive parties. Is that what he said?
Well, this is going to be very interesting. You know, I will go out on a limb here, Katleho, and say that a part of me still believes, as I've analyzed the numbers, that, you know, I see the polls, but a part of me thinks the ANC may still have a chance to pull it off. And the reason I say this is that while the ANC in many ways has failed currently to sell a story that it has the right or has the ability to govern for the next 5 years, given its track record, the opposition parties haven't really come with a critical vision, an alternative vision for the country that can truly stand. Given the fact that when we look at these moonshot agreements, they are very sensitive to change. And we know towards the time of these elections and when the results are out, that a lot of moving parts will come to play here. So it is still not clear who the ANC will go into bed with. And I do understand that many believe that it will be an ANC-EFF alliance. But that is not too clear. We have seen in local government elections that the weirdest bedfellows come together. And it is likely that we will see the same happen in these elections, given that politicians seek out power. And that is a critical purpose that they have. And so where power rests, that is where the negotiations will be. So if the ANC can perform well enough close towards that 50, it will make the negotiations very interesting. If they get below 45, they will be more desperate, meaning they will need more partners, and meaning the negotiation will swing towards these other parties in terms of strength of negotiation. So time will tell. We're not there yet, and there's still a long way before those elections, and there is still time for the ANC to consolidate around a clear message. But is President Cyril Ramaphosa that man? Is the ANC still the leader of the national democratic revolution, or should South Africans be thinking about another home? And this is the thing that every South African should really be thinking about. Which party presents a clear vision, a clear strategy, and a clear way forward to rebuild this country's economy? And it's all about the economy, the economy, the economy. The party that wins on that message will win the day.
And do parties then, such as the MK and the ACT party, stand a chance when you speak policy, when you speak about what their clear vision is? Because it seems at this stage, none of that has clearly been communicated. So beyond the 2024 elections, do you see the existence or the continued existence and growth of parties such as the MK party and the ACT party?
Well, to be fair to them, given that they are relatively new parties, and still establishing their footing in the body politic of South Africa, it will take time for them to really be able to present a clear vision and strategy and policy position that they can sell to the South African electorate. But they need to start thinking about these things right now. It is not enough to simply be anti-ANC or critical of the African National Congress. They have to have a clear vision about what they represent. Now, the danger for the MK party, which I think was a shot in the foot, was to sell the creation of the MK party as a bid towards saving the ANC. Now, the challenge with that is if a voter is truly disgruntled with the ANC, and may be interested in the policies as presented by the MK party, if the bid is for the MK party to save the ANC, potentially through the MK party negotiating a coalition government with the ANC, this then, defeats the purpose for that particular disgruntled electorate. And it is likely that he or she will likely then vote for another party rather than the MK party. And so, they really need to relook that particular strategy of tagging their particular existence in terms of saving the ANC rather than presenting a clear alternative vision than the ANC. And in many ways, that may hinder them and that may make them look like another ANC in a different kilt. And that's where the challenge is. And for parties like the IFP, it means that they don't really have to worry about what happens in KZN because it just means that the ANC vote will be split. And such a move would in actual fact favor the IFP and the DA and in fact the Moonshot Pact. So in many ways, the creation of the MK party for its current purposes is self-defeating. And I think if I was advising the MK party, I would say relook the purpose in which you have come to existence or you shouldn't have existed at all.
All right, Musa Mdunge, thank you so much for your analysis.